My name is Mason, and 2 years ago, one night taught me more about love, self-respect, and silence than all the years before it ever did. Back then, there was a woman named Jenna who could light up any room just by stepping into it. If there were 100 conversations happening, she would be at the center of the loudest one. If there were 10 plans on the table, she would choose the most electric one and convince everyone else to come along. I'm not built like that. I'm the quiet type, the one who asks 2 questions and actually listens to the answers, who values depth over volume, stillness over spectacle. For a while, that difference felt like balance. She was spark. I was steady flame. Opportunities to leave our city found me more than once, offers that would have meant better money, bigger rooms, faster ladders to climb. I stayed. I stayed because I loved her, because I thought we were building toward the same address at the end of the road, because I pictured a home we'd invent together, and one day, small voices running around inside it. I was all in, and I believed she was too, right up until the night I learned how wrong a person can be while telling themselves they're right. That night should have been one of the happiest of my life. It was Jenna's birthday. It was also our relationship anniversary, and it was the night I planned to propose. I had a reservation at a place I couldn't really afford without flinching, a small table tucked away, and in my pocket, a ring I'd turned over 100 times in my hands to make sure it caught the light in a way her eyes would love. I had rehearsed the words until they no longer sounded like practice. I had imagined the way she'd smile, maybe cry, the way her hand would look in mine when the band was finally where it belonged. I was nervous in a way that felt like waking up early for a flight to somewhere warm. Then, at the last minute, she ditched our dinner for a party. One of those glossy, high-status things her friends treated like proof of life. No conversation. No apology. Just, "I'll make it up to you. We can do dinner another day." I called, hoping maybe the spontaneity had burned off and she'd redirect toward us. She said I was overreacting. "It's just dinner," she said, as if all I'd planned was a plate of food, and not a life. She had no idea what she was throwing away, and I was standing there holding it. Something inside me broke. I lay in bed that night staring at a ceiling that didn't answer questions. How does someone who swears they love you make you feel invisible on purpose? How could I be holding a ring while she chose a room full of strangers over the small room where our future was waiting to be asked for? Morning came with a weight in my chest and a thin ribbon of hope I didn't want, but couldn't cut. Maybe she'd realize what she'd done. Maybe there'd be a message. Maybe a call. Hours passed. Nothing. If she cared, she would have reached out. If there were even an ounce of regret, she would have said something. Silence told me what her voice didn't. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for a woman who had already set her priorities and filed me under later. Right then, I made the first clean decision I'd made in months. I was done. I found her number, deleted it, and blocked every door she might use to walk back in when life got quiet. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, messages, everything. I erased photos, threads, the little digital artifacts people cling to so nostalgia can rob them blind. If I wasn't a priority, she wouldn't have access. There was another truth I had to face as soon as her name left my phone. There was nothing keeping me in that city anymore. I had turned down offers so I wouldn't leave her. Now staying felt like a kind of dishonesty. I didn't wait for another offer to arrive. I told myself the most important sentence I've ever handed myself. When I get there, opportunities will come. I wasn't going to let life happen to me. I sat my parents down that night and told them the whole thing. The plan, the ring, the way it dissolved into a guest list, the long, empty hours that followed. My mother's face carried the kind of heartbreak only mothers know. The pain of knowing your child did everything right and was still made to feel small. My father said little. His silence wasn't judgment pointed at me. He was angry at what had been done to me, the way a quiet man is, a deep, settled kind of anger that doesn't ask for a stage. They supported my decision to leave. They didn't ask for details about where I'd go, and I didn't give any. I didn't want Jenna showing up with a story dense enough to climb back inside my life on a technicality. The next morning, I packed bags that held less than I owned and more than I needed, and I left. I messaged an old schoolmate, Marco, who'd moved to a bigger city years earlier. We hadn't spoken in a long time. "Crash at my place for a while," he said, as if we'd just gotten off the phone yesterday. That's where I landed. I barely talked about what happened. Marco could tell I was hollowed out. He didn't pry. I was grateful. I didn't want to process it out loud. I wanted to drown the noise with work. So I did. I took everything that came day shifts, night shifts, warehouses, deliveries, and a few freelance tech jobs when I could cut the time out of the rest. My body was tired. My mind was too numb to care. I refused to check social media, refused to wonder what she was doing, refused to say her name even in my head. Relationships? No. I wasn't interested in love, dating, or anyone else's opinions. I was interested in building a life that didn't require anyone's permission to feel like mine. I split every dollar I made into 2 buckets, investing in myself and investing in the market. I learned everything I could about money. I watched videos, read books, studied how to make my money go earn its own. Slowly, results arrived. After a few months, I moved into my own place. It wasn't glossy, it was enough. 2 years passed the way time does when you stop staring at it, in a blur that leaves proof behind. The pain that had once set the thermostat in every room no longer controlled the temperature. Looking back, I realized something I couldn't have said then. Jenna did me a favor. If she hadn't walked away from me that night, I might never have walked toward the life I was supposed to have. One afternoon at the mall, I turned a corner near the food court and ran into a piece of my past in the shape of a person. At first, my brain didn't process it. Then it clicked. Eva, Jenna's old friend. The last time I'd heard her name was when Jenna accused her of trying to steal me. I had believed Jenna. I had judged Eva without ever having a chance to test the story on my own. Standing there now, Eva didn't look like anyone's villain. She looked surprised and genuinely glad to see me. "Wow, Tyler," she said, using the name I hadn't heard in a long while. "I never thought I'd see you here." "It's been a while," I answered, still catching up inside my own head. We'd barely spoken back then. Jenna had made sure of that. After a small silence that could have turned into something awkward, Eva asked if I had time for coffee. I said yes because, at worst, I'd be uncomfortable for 20 minutes. At best, I'd get clarity I didn't know I needed. We found a small table in the mall cafe and sat. Eva didn't circle the runway. She landed. "I always felt like Jenna didn't appreciate you," she said. "That's why we stopped being friends." That sentence rearranged a file drawer in my head. It didn't match the story I'd been told. I asked what she meant. She told me she'd confronted Jenna about how she treated me, how selfish she was inside our relationship, how little she respected my time, and the weight I carried without complaint. Instead of listening, Jenna turned it into an accusation. Eva was after me. That rumor spread, as rumors do, faster than the truth. By the time Eva tried to defend herself, the friend group had chosen a side, and it wasn't hers. As Eva talked, a bunch of small, confusing memories clicked into place. I realized I'd been living in Jenna's version of reality for a long time, without ever questioning whether it was edited for her benefit. It wasn't just the anniversary night, it was a pattern. Jenna painted herself innocent, threw others under the bus, and stood at a distance while they got run over. I just nodded, because shame wasn't what I felt. Relief was. For the first time since the night everything snapped, I didn't feel stupid. I told Eva my side, the ring in my pocket, the party, the empty morning after, the blocking, the leaving, the work. She listened without interrupting. It felt strange and good to be believed without having to audition for it. We exchanged numbers before we left. We kept in touch. There was something easy about talking to her. Maybe because she'd been burned by the same fire, Maybe because she didn't want anything from me I wasn't ready to give. We started grabbing lunch, watching a movie sometimes, just being around a person who didn't need me to be anyone else to deserve being treated kindly. I stayed guarded. She never pushed. Because she didn't push, I could breathe. One Sunday, I was finishing up cleaning the apartment when the place filled with the smell of fresh coffee. Ava had texted earlier, on my way, bringing something I cooked. She'd made a habit of that over time, showing up with homemade food, as if care could be wrapped in foil and carried in both hands. I didn't mind. It felt like a language I understood. When the bell rang, I opened the door, expecting to see her smile and a warm container of something good. It wasn't Eva. It was Jenna. My brain froze for a second, and then rebooted. She looked almost the same and completely different. The kind of different time puts in a person's eyes when the mirror stops telling them what they want to hear. "How did you find me here?" was the first thing out of my mouth. She opened her mouth to explain. I didn't let her. "Leave," I said. Just that. Because she had no business at my door. Because I had nothing for her. She started crying, howls that looked like pain and sounded like consequence, and said she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. She begged. Said she'd treated me horribly. Said she'd taken me for granted. Said she should never have let me go. Said that after I disappeared, nothing in her life went right. She searched my face for sympathy. There wasn't any. I had imagined this moment 100 times. I thought I'd feel rage or the strange satisfaction of being begged by the person who once treated me like a background object. All I felt was an honest, overwhelming indifference. Footsteps sounded behind her. We both turned. Ava walked up the steps carrying a container, her smile unforced and warm, her presence the exact opposite of the mess on my doorstep. Jenna's breath hitched, her eyes widened. I stepped forward, pulled Eva into a hug and kissed her cheek. "Welcome," I said. Steady voice, easy truth. Eva smiled, unfazed by Jenna's presence, because that's who Eva is. She never has to try too hard to be enough. Without another word, I took Eva's hand, stepped inside, and shut the door. I locked it. I didn't look through the peephole. I didn't wait to hear footsteps fade. 2 years earlier, she had made a choice. Now it was my turn to make mine. Pain is a brutal teacher, but it's thorough. When Jenna chose a party over me, I thought my world had collapsed. I lay awake that night, wondering if I'd been too clingy, too demanding, simply not enough. The truth is, I was never the problem. She didn't value me the way I valued her. And the best decision I've ever made was the one that looked like running away. I walked. Life has a way of balancing things out if you let it. I heard she jumped into a new relationship almost immediately. Someone who matched her pace. A life that looked like a party from the outside. The guy wasn't just loud, he was violent. He drank too much. He turned chaos into a lifestyle. They yelled, they fought, they lived in a constant loop of drama. It fell apart like things built on volatility always do. When there was nothing left, she showed up at my door. She begged. It was too late. I had moved on. I had grown. I had learned the lesson people talk about without living. Real love doesn't need to be forced. If someone wants to be in your life, they act like it. They don't make you compete against strangers for attention. They don't treat you like a placeholder until something shinier passes by. So here's where I land. I wasn't harsh. I was honest. I wasn't cruel. I was finished. And if anyone reading this has been taken for granted, has been replaced in a sentence that begins with, "Plenty of men want me," hear this. You don't have to audition for a role you've already been playing well. Walk. Let the silence do the talking you've been trying to do with your whole life. And when life delivers the moment at the door 2 years later, you'll learn what indifference feels like when it's earned. Not coldness, but peace. Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for the version of you who stayed too long is to close the door gently and let the past figure itself out on the other side.